What's up, Steelers fans? Welcome back to another episode of Around the Burgh. I'm your host, Mitchell Wolf, here with my co-host, Shane Kubis. We're here to recap the first wave of the Steelers free agency in this 2022 offseason. A lot of big moves for the Steelers, something they're not really used to doing, but it's been a pretty exciting first few days. Shane, how you feeling so far?
Better than I thought I would. Let me put
Mhm.
it that way. As much as we talked a lot about, what they could do, what they might be looking to do, and we tried to, kind of make it sound like we were expecting something, but I think personally, at least inside my head, I was thinking, man, they might just do nothing also because this is the Steelers. So the fact that they've done what they have done, even though there's nothing like big spectacular, which we knew was not going to happen, they weren't going to make any giant plays, but every move they've made so far either makes total sense to me or is really good value for the player that they got.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty surprising start to the offseason for the Steelers, and they still
Yeah.
haven't made a major free agency
No,
move. And
not really. No.
that's just not their style. But they have
It's not.
made a lot of moves that are relatively unexpected due to their past history. So where do you want to start with this with these moves? Because I think there's kind of two directions we can go, and we'll go whichever one you want to go.
I feel like we got to start with the offensive stuff, right? Because this is the side of the
Okay.
ball that
Well,
needed the
so
biggest
my two paths
overhaul.
were both offensive. So which one do you want to go with?
Me first, then.
Hmm?
You want to do Trubisky first, then?
Yeah, let's. I'll toot my own horn.
Yeah. I was gonna say go for
Honestly,
it.
that
Yeah.
wasn't the direction I was even thinking. But let's toot my own horn because I've been saying for months now that
Yes, months now.
Trubisky would be a good move because they could sign him for relatively cheap. He's a bridge quarterback. You know, the best case scenario, they salvage his career somewhat. You know, he could be successful in Matt Canada offense. Worst case scenario, it's not a huge signing in terms of money, and you can dump him after a year or two, and it's not a big deal. And that's exactly what they did. Sign Mitchell Trubisky to a 2-year, $14 million deal ish, and then there's a lot of money on top of that with incentives, but he would have to be a Pro Bowl or All Pro type quarterback to hit those incentives, I imagine. So I mean, like, I know it's, a lot of, I think most Steelers fans understand that he's not the future of the franchise, but they understand, okay, this is a guy who's better than Mason Rudolph that can make this offense run, honestly, better than Ben did last year.
Right, and I think that going back to like you mentioning him, and I will say, admittedly, I was not on that train at all at first. Whenever you start talking about it, and kind of slowly over time, I kind of went back and tried to look at him more, and he kind of just left a bad taste in my mouth with his Bears
Yeah, and
days,
that's
and
totally
and that's what
understandable. Yeah,
happens, right? Like,
absolutely.
but players can develop, they can change over time, and also this is not a situation where we're taking a big risk on him, right? We're not making him this guaranteed long-term starter. None of that is happening. As a bridge guy, I think of the guys that were available, he has the right balance of still some potential, being only going to be 27 this year in August, and also current talent that he has, but also isn't going to be a guy that you can't move on from if he doesn't work out. You're not giving him a ton of money or putting any resources into him where if things do fall off the wagon in year one, we're not going to be on the hook for some crazy amount of money or have any reservations of getting rid of him if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like, I don't expect Mitchell Trubisky to take a huge step forward,
No.
with this offense, but my big thing was let's use the resources that Steelers have this offseason to rebuild the offensive line. You know, we're not this is not the year to go in and find the new quarterback.
No, it's not.
Let's get a bridge guy and see, and maybe and again, it's a low risk kind, and maybe it works out. Maybe he does, play pretty well. I think that is a distinct possibility. But the other thing is that, like, you just signing Trubisky, and this is something that I've heard that I was thinking of, and that I've also heard from other people, is that this gives you options.
Yes.
This doesn't say, okay, we need to draft a quarterback in the first round. We need to trade up and get Malik Willis. And, there's been a lot of smoke about the Steelers and Malik Willis.
Yeah.
Do they need to trade up and get him? Are they really in love with them? Regardless, let's say they do really love him, want to trade up with him, up to try to get him. Now that they have somebody who can play the quarterback position, their leverage is better to make that trade up where they want to trade up to get into the early teens or something like that. Or say, all right, if you don't make the trade, that's fine. We'll ride with Trubisky and we can live with that. As opposed to, trying to convince the other team that we want to ride with Mason Rudolph or Dwayne Haskins, which is a ridiculous proposition.
Yeah.
And if they don't need to trade up, that's cool too, because as I've said for a long time, I think Malik Willis needs that year to sit. And, is Trubisky the best guy to sit behind and like learn how to be an NFL quarterback? Probably not, but he's fine. Like he kind of understood, he learned the backup role behind Josh Allen last
Hmm.
year, and I think him learning, just him sitting and learning is good enough. Like he doesn't need a super experienced NFL vet to learn behind. But so, even if let's say like by some miracle Malik Willis falls to them at 20 and they draft him, all right, cool. Like he can sit behind Trubisky
Yeah.
and that works just as well. And then, if they want to take that home run swing, it's not my preferred method of going about it, but it's fine.
Yeah, and I think the thing about it too is I've said before that I don't think that Willis would have his best chance at having a good NFL career of going to the Steelers, just because he likely wouldn't sit long with the current situation at quarterback before this move, because as much as he has a lot of work to do and he probably won't be ready to really run a lot of the offense initially just based on what his offense was at Liberty, he's still going to beat Mason Rudolph out not long
Mhm.
after the season. I mean, like we know this. Like it's not going to take long for him in practice, especially just to look way better than him. So that might force him on the field, and then I don't trust Canada necessarily to like be the guy that can coach him up and make him successful. Now, if they do it, you don't have to force him to play, because Trubisky is going to be good enough at least to not, unless he really flames out hard, he's going to be good enough to keep him off the field.
Which like
And yeah,
like you can, like, I get it. People make fun of Trubisky and whatever, but like
yeah,
there was this really funny TikTok I saw of like it was a segment of a Colin Cowherd show where he was doing like the blind resume game,
yeah,
where it was showing that Trubisky is better than Carson Wentz, Baker
uh-huh,
Mayfield, Ryan Tannehill.
yeah,
And it's just like like those Chicago teams like underachieved for
they
sure, and
did, yeah,
he's kind of funny as a quarterback, but those teams were never catastrophically bad. They
no,
were
they weren't.
never Deshaun Kaiser level bad.
Like I've
Like
seen
they
people
were
say we're going to
fine.
win 4 games next year, and I'm like, we're going to win 4 games next year with a better roster than we had last
Yeah,
year, and a quarterback that
exactly.
can like move 2 feet.
Yeah.
I just don't get, like, again, is he the most polished quarterback? No.
No.
Is he a guy that's gonna? I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that's a true long term starter. But like a best case scenario, can he be that next kind of Ryan Tannehill? You mentioned his name, guy that
Even
falls off and comes
a
back.
poor man's Ryan Tannehill that
Yeah,
brings
even something like
like
that,
somewhere
right?
between Teddy Bridgewater and Ryan Tannehill.
Exactly. Like that would be plenty good enough
Yeah.
to hold it down until we can find a true better option than him. Because again, none of the guys in this class, at least to me, like Willis, again, obviously he has a ton of potential. None of these guys strike me as guys you have to go after if you
Mhm.
have the opportunity this year. It doesn't seem that way to me. So this lets you put that off if you want to. I think that hopefully they will, but if they don't, whatever. And then you still have the opportunity next year to try to find that guy, whether it's in the draft or however you end up needing to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, like the biggest thing about this offseason was using the salary cap room that they had and the draft
Mhm.
capital they had to rebuild the offense, specifically the offensive line, because
Yes,
the better your offensive line is, the better the floor of your quarterback is. And
absolutely.
so we'll get into that now. And that's where the Steelers have made the most moves this offseason so
Mhm.
far. So they made, I'll say, three key signings. So the
Yeah,
first one that I want to get into is re-signing right tackle Chukwuma Okorafor to a 3-year, $29.25 million deal. And I like this move a lot. And I
yeah,
know that some Steelers fans might be like, "Oh, that's so much money for a guy who wasn't that good." But he's the 27th highest paid offensive tackle in the NFL, which I think that's a fair salary, for what he does. And here's the thing, like, this is a big case of the devil you know versus the devil you don't.
yeah.
And this is a pretty decent devil, to be honest. Like, he's very solid in pass protection. I get it. He's not the best run blocker, but he's fine. He's still super young. Like, he's not even 25 yet. By the time the season starts, he will be. But
Right.
there's still some room to grow for him. And like, I know I'm higher on him than most people in the Steelers, like, media atmosphere, but there's still some room to grow. And I think that once you get a better offensive line around him and a more complete offense, he can continue to get better. So I think this is a really good move for them, honestly.
And I think the thing that people need to realize, right, is yes, our offensive line was bad last year, objectively, but he was the most consistent player on that offensive line. And to let him go and, like you said, take a chance on a different tackle, like we weren't getting a Teron Armstead.
No.
We weren't getting even a guy like Trent Brown wasn't going to be coming here. Like somebody who was a clear upgrade to him was not going to happen, most likely. So instead of taking a chance of getting worse at that position, they said, okay, we'll give you a market value deal roughly.
Yeah.
And again, he's not a bad tackle. And that's the thing
No.
is the difference between bad tackle play and like average tackle play is a huge difference on game day in this league right now,
Yeah.
especially with the way the AFC is right now. Like the AFC is loaded with
Like
pass
just
rushers
just
right
think
now.
about this. Dan Moore was
Yeah,
an average, let's say, like a league average
yeah,
tackle.
he
Would you
was
agree with that? Yeah.
roughly.
And Chooks was better than him.
He was, yeah.
So, you know,
Again, I think it's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with the signing. Anyone who's getting worked up about it just doesn't realize how hard it is to find tackle
yeah.
play in the NFL. It's
It's
hard.
really hard.
It is.
It is not a deep position, right? Like it
No,
hasn't
not
been
at
for a
all.
long time. And it's just a hard position to play. Like,
It is.
so, you're just not going to get much better than that. And let's say he's bad this year. They can get out of it after 1 year pretty
That's
easily
another
with
thing
only
too.
6
Yeah.
million dead cap
Yeah, they
and
protected themselves in
and
case that happens.
and save a lot of money. So, and
Mhm.
I don't think they're going to want to do that because I think
Probably
that,
not.
like I said, like he has good chemistry with the guys who are there. This offensive line is young across the board. I don't think anybody's older than like 28, maybe
I
even
think
older
the
than like
oldest is
27.
something like that. Yeah, it's
Yeah. So like
close to
these are
that.
young dudes. They're gonna grow up and get better together. So I like this move a lot. The next move I honestly don't love, but it is what it is. Signing Mason Cole from the Vikings, who he's had a bit of an embattled NFL career. He's
Mhm.
played a lot of different positions. I honestly think he has a lot of the same issues that Kendrick Green has as a center, but he's a much different body type. But 3 years, 5 million a year, about, he can play almost every position of the line. Honestly, I'm fine with that for getting a veteran swing guy. You got kind of Joe Haig as your swing tackle. You got Mason Cole as your uh, swing guy on the inside, kind of replacing BJ Finney. I'm fine with that, honestly. And he might,
Yeah.
provide some competition for Kendrick Green, which is all good in my book.
Yeah, and honestly, and we talked about it before the show, but I think the key thing with him, like you said, is that he fills a need at multiple spots if one were to arise, right? Whether it's injury, whether Green just does not look like a guy who can start again. Again, if he doesn't improve pretty drastically from last year, it looks like he could be that guy that kind of is an odd man out, but it gives them the ability to plug the best 5 guys in the lineup or replace one of them if one of them goes down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. He's played every position. He's even played some left tackle, which I would not like him to play.
I mean, no, but it's nice to know that he's done it for sure, because then at least you don't have to worry about having a guy or putting a guy in there that's never done something before if injuries get real bad. So
yeah, and Mason Cole is probably better than if they have to put John Leglu or J.C. Hassenauer in the lineup.
Yeah, we don't need to do that again. So
exactly. So I like that. I like that move for that reason. I don't love his on-field play, but some people were like, "Hey, he played really well against the Steelers when they played the Vikings
he
this
did.
year."
Yeah.
So that's part of it.
That's probably helped him. Yeah.
Yeah. So the last move is the biggest one, and that's signing James Daniels from the Bears, who they gave a 3-year, $26.5 million contract to. With it basically has the base salary this year is only $1.25 million. They can get out of it after this year, but I really like this signing because like Chooks, this dude is only 24 years old. He's played center. He's played both guard positions. He's been pretty good. The Bears not re-signing was pretty surprising to me. And like you were saying in the pre-show, we were surprised he didn't get more money from somebody else. Like, this is a great signing for the Steelers because, like I've been talking about Kevin Dotson, like he played right guard in college. So he's played left guard for the Steelers. Maybe they move him. Daniels has played both guard positions. They can put him at either. Daniels even played center. Like, I wouldn't love to put him there, but if they want to put him there, maybe move Green to guard, that works too. So, like, I think I saw Duke Manyweather, who, he's trained Kevin Dotson, he's trained Kevin Green. He said, like, hey, put Green at left guard, put Daniels at center, and put Dotson at right guard. So they're all at their, quote, natural positions. And really any combination of those three besides Dotson playing center, I'm fine with.
And that's something that's interesting too with Daniels is he was a center coming out of Iowa, right? Like that was his natural position, and some of his athletic profile for center is disgusting.
Oh yeah,
and crazy. Like I think his RAS score is like 9.24.
Yeah,
or something
it's like Marquise like I'm not saying he's as good as Marquise Pouncey, but like the athleticism level is like that of a Marquise Pouncey or even like a Jason Kelsey. Like 100%, that is his calling card.
Right. So I think that the problem with it, he's played honestly center the least of the positions he's
Mhm.
played so far in the NFL. And I
And he's
think
played a
that,
different every
yeah,
year he's
they've been
played
moving him around.
like the
Yeah.
majority of his snaps have come at a different position. So
Right.
that's been kind of the reason why he has quote unquote struggled because
Yeah.
there's been different coaching staffs, there's been different offenses, there's been, he's played different positions. So it's mostly unfair to him. But like once
It is.
Steelers get a hold of him and say, all right, you're playing this, we're sticking with
Yeah.
that,
And
So
honestly, as much as I like the idea of him playing center, just because I think he's probably the best center on the roster by a good bit, even without playing very much. Because
yeah.
Green didn't show me enough to think that he's obviously a better player than him right now. Cole can play center. I think that's probably his actual best spot, if I'm being honest. But he's not going to supplant Green unless Green really falls off. Like we said, he's kind of probably gonna be more of a swing guy. But if you don't play Daniels at center, as much as Dotson was a right guard and maybe he wants to play there,
Mhm.
Daniels had his best season of his career staying at right guard last year for the Bears, and he's an ascending player at that spot. I wouldn't want to move him off that unless he's also very comfortable moving to either left or center. So we'll see how they kind of move those guys around there.
Yeah, like if they want to keep Green at center for maybe until
Yeah,
the bye week,
give it a
excuse me,
shot,
give
see
him
what
a
he looks like.
chance.
Yeah,
That's fine. Then at the bye week, if it's gone relatively poorly, like all right, listen, like we got to make a change. Switch to Daniels, or even switch to Cole
yeah,
if
right.
you don't want Green in the lineup. That's fine too. But this is a great move. I've seen a lot of praise from it from a lot of different people on Twitter. Surprised they got this
Bears fans are
deal.
not happy about
No,
it.
no,
They're really
and
not. It's been
yeah,
rough for them.
and a lot of people are like, wow, like this is a great coup for the Steelers for a guy who
Yeah,
can be a above average starter on the offensive line. Um, so that's pretty much the state of the offensive moves. And again, like I've said, like this year is kind of it's a low risk, high reward year. Like
yes,
you're kind of giving Matt Canada this shot. Like, hey, we're going to rebuild the offensive line. We're not going to give you the best quarterback to work with, but if you can make it work, maybe we'll give you another shot next year with maybe the new quarterback. And from all the stuff I've seen in terms of stats, like giving Trubisky this play action, motion heavy offense that makes it simple for the quarterback, that's where he succeeds. So that fits Matt Canada with T. That fits what they want to do with this offense. Running some outside zone stuff with Najee and then running boot action, play action off of it. I still think they need to find a new wide receiver 3
yes,
that could.
yeah.
But other than that, like I'm excited for how this offense is going to go.
Yeah, really offensively at this point, it's who's your third receiver? Is Juju going to come back? Because his market apparently has been very, very cold, which I
Hmm.
kind of expected. So maybe they can bring him back at a good price. Is it going to be a draft pick? I think that probably no matter what they do at receiver up until the draft, they're still going to probably take one in the first 3 rounds. But solidifying that spot, that's really the last thing that I think they have to do before the season starts. Outside of that, they've pretty much covered a lot of their needs at this point.
Yeah. So with that, let's move on to the defense. And so it's been a little bit weird because we expected them to re-sign some of the players that
Yeah.
were hitting free agency, such as your Terrell Edmondses, maybe your Joe Haydens, your Akella Witherspoons, and they didn't do that as much. They did re-sign Montravius Adams, which I think was a really good
Yeah,
move. He
really
played
smart
really
move.
well down the stretch, a good rotational backup nose tackle that we all really like, and he got a 2-year, $5 million deal. That's very solid. Like that a lot. And they brought in 2 outside guys, and one of them they brought in just, hours before we decided to
Yeah.
record.
Mhm.
But the first one is Levi Wallace, who they brought over from the Bills for a 2-year, $8 million deal. And again, another player that played very well against the Steelers the last few years, but in my mind, he is basically a solid cornerback too. So I really and I still hope they do it. Maybe by the time we're done recording, they'll have re-signed him. But
Maybe.
I really do want them to re-sign Akella Witherspoon because of how well he played down the stretch last year. So if they re-sign him and Wallace gets bumped down to like cornerback 3 or something, I'm very happy with that. But if he is cornerback 2, that's okay. I can live with it.
Yeah, and the thing for me is this deal kind of we talked about this also pre-show is assuming especially they are able to bring Witherspoon back too. This means that even if they do go cornerback very early, which is something I feel is going to happen at this
Hmm.
point, at least one of the first 2 picks, it makes it so you don't have to throw that player out there if they're not ready.
Hmm.
And there's a very good chance, especially if they do wait till maybe the second round, that he won't be ready. So
Hmm.
having 2 guys can start at outside corner specifically
Hmm.
is really important to have. So I'm hoping they do bring Witherspoon back or another outside corner into play.
To that point, it makes it so they don't have to recreate the scenario from the 2016 2017 draft where they had to draft a cornerback and they ended up having to take Artie Burns when the Bengals stole William Jackson.
Yeah.
At this point, they don't have to take the corner in the first round. They can wait until the second round
If they want to, yeah.
if the board falls in a way they don't love,
Right.
if something else, whatever, they can wait. If they don't sign Witherspoon, I wouldn't love them to, but they can. So, Levi Wallace is a solid player. I think they like his ability to defend the run as a corner. So
Yeah, he's very good
important
at
for this
that
defense.
too. Yeah.
He kind of, in terms of a coverage defender, he kind of presents some of the same problems that James Pierre does as they both
Yeah, a little
undrafted
bit.
free agents. But he played at Alabama. He was a good starter at Alabama for many years, so he's a solid player. The other big one, which just came across the wire, is the Steelers somehow signed Miles Jack after the Jaguars released him, which is a pretty big move. This move was, I think, made possible by them cutting Zach Banner.
Yep, and then Schaubert's gone now too. They cut him officially.
They did cut him officially.
Yep,
Okay.
Yeah, it was they announced that a little while ago that he's gone too, which I expected as soon as I saw that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. I'm just gonna see if I can. I'm just trying to find that. Yeah,
I know.
Makes a lot of sense.
Initially, I think Dulac reported it, and then not long after he said it was going to happen, I think it was made official. I'm not sure. I forget where exactly, but should be official at this point.
Yeah, I'm looking for that now. But anyways, like getting Miles Jack, who's a very, very good linebacker on a pretty just bad team, is great to see. And pairing him with Devin Bush again, he's not necessarily the traditional buck linebacker they've looked for. In terms of being that downhill run stuffer, but he's still a really good player.
Exactly. It's one of those things where he had a down year by his standards last year, but again he played on a really bad Jaguars team, right? Mm-hmm. He's going to be on the most talented defense he's been on since the 2017-18-ish Jaguars, whenever they had that core of defensive players there. He isn't going to have to be the guy necessarily on defense because of the fact we have, TJ Watt, we have all these other players that are going to be in front of him, helping him be able to be free to do what he needs to do. And he's a better athlete than anyone we had on the team other than Bush at linebacker.
Yeah.
So, it comes down to, you want to add athleticism in that spot. You have to be able to cover ground, because we can't have the gaping holes that we had to deal with last year and guys running through those. So
listen, not at these terms, but if they had signed Miles Jack to be Najee's backup at running back,
that also probably been fine with that too. He was such an interesting player coming out of UCLA. Yeah. Like I could not. I'm like, what is this guy? Like, is he actually a two-way player? Like, what is this?
So Dulac said, his tweet says, the addition of Miles Jack means the Steelers will release Joe Schobert, who is scheduled to count $9.7 million against the salary cap in 2022. So it's weird because that indicates that that's happening, but doesn't necessarily say that it has happened. So
right. So like my assumption at this point is, based on what he's telling, like, it wouldn't make sense for them to make this move. Mm-hmm. And so that whether that means he heard it's happening or he is just making the sensible just like thing saying that they're going to do that is one of those two. But I imagine it's going to be happening, because what's the point of carrying a cap hit of almost $10 million for a linebacker that's not going to start over those two?
Yeah, I agree, because I think Jack is better than Schobert.
Regardless
of what role they ask either of those guys to play. But
yeah, he's just a better player. Yeah,
that's a move that's very exciting to me. So as of right now, we don't have the exact numbers because the breakdown of Jack's contract has not been released yet. But as of right now, the Steelers are in the low teens, as in like 13th-ish in terms of salary cap. And based on what an average of Jack's contract would be, they have about $13 to $14 million left in terms of salary cap room. Now, I'm not exactly sure how much that accounts for draft picks. I seem to think that usually when the draft pick salary is kind of separate from the draft cap salary.
Usually when they're reporting cap numbers, it's usually taking into account whatever the current draft picks will cost as well. So
exactly. So
we can assume that.
Yeah. So with about $13 to $14 million left this year, I still think it's pretty possible for them to bring back some combination of Edmonds, Witherspoon, Hayden, and or Juju. I don't know exactly what. I don't think they'll be able to get all four. That would be a stretch.
Unless they really finagle the first year of those deals, which I guess they could.
Yeah.
if they really want to. But I do think if Witherspoon comes back, Hayden doesn't. I think
Yeah.
if Hayden comes back, Witherspoon doesn't.
Yeah.
So
Those two are probably
those are
mutually
probably
exclusive.
the two most likely to be flip flopped as far as if they're going to get 3 or the 4.
Yeah.
But Edmonds, though, I haven't heard anything about him at all as
Nope.
far as like visits with other teams or any rumors about him. So I don't know if he's just kind of waiting to get offers to compare to what, to bring back to the Steelers, say, hey, this is what I'm getting. Or there's just not really any interest because a lot of safeties outside of Matthew have been signed already.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
Marcus May,
so,
Marcus Williams, Justin Reed have all been signed.
yes.
Um,
Even
all
Jordan Whitehead to the Jets. Yeah.
Jordan Whitehead got the smallest of those
He
deals
did, yeah,
at
which that was
7
kind of
million a
surprising
year.
to me, honestly. I thought he'd be closer to like 9-ish, honestly, but still. I
Yeah,
mean,
so,
yeah,
Edmund that's great for the Steelers, not necessarily great for Edmonds, but
exactly.
considering that his 5th-year option was about 6 million, I think if they had to bring him back at an average of 7 million per year, I think they'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
On maybe a 3-year deal about 27 to 24 million where they kind of backload it so they can bring in other pieces. That's a great move.
Hmm.
Yeah, Fitzpatrick has talked a lot about bringing Edmonds back because he likes playing with him.
Yes, that's a big
So
thing too.
I think that would be a good move. Again, I would love to bring Witherspoon back. Again, not much smoke there. Cornerbacks have gotten a lot of money so far this offseason, so he hasn't played as well as the rest of them consistently, so that might not price him out just yet. I'm not sure if they will be able to finagle anything beyond like 8 million a year.
Yeah, I feel like with him, I don't know if he's just waiting to see if anyone wants to throw an offer his way. That's
Yeah.
more than whatever the Steelers might be trying to get him for
Yeah.
or what it is. But I do think he's going to fall somewhere in that 7 to 8 million a year range for a short deal, like 2 years, probably maybe 3 at max,
Yeah, I was thinking of like a 2-year deal with a 3rd year like team option.
type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Because he's had a hard time sticking in one place and
Yeah.
actually playing well. So, like, I think for him, it would make a lot of sense, even if maybe some teams are offering a little bit more
Hmm.
money. It might make more sense for him to just come back and prove that he can be a full time starter
Yeah.
at a high level, and that it would get with.
Oh, sorry, you kind of you froze and cut out there for a
Okay,
few seconds.
but no, with it would just be the best chance for him to do that if he stayed with us to
Oh yeah,
cement
for sure.
himself as a starting caliber corner full time.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely. Because I don't think he's had really a stretch of as good a play as he did to finish the
no,
last part of the season. And like you said, like Hayden and Witherspoon are probably mutually exclusive. At this point, I probably want to bring back Witherspoon more because he's so much younger
yeah,
and he
he's
offers
a
more
better
upside.
outside corner. He's an outside corner that can actually still play
Yeah.
outside corner opposed
And
to
then,
yeah.
I have Juju here. I just really need them to get a 3rd receiver. So then if they do draft a guy, like he can start off as their 4th and then maybe build his role up as the season goes on.
Mhm.
Because right now their wide receiver room is barren behind Deontay
Yeah.
and Claypool.
Yeah, they need to add at least one free agent, whether
Mhm.
it's like you said, bring Juju back, which again, it seems like unless some team comes out of nowhere with a solid deal, like I don't see why he doesn't come back on a short deal just to kind of hopefully have a chance to rebuild his value in a better situation than he tried to do last year. He's still young enough where if he takes another
Mhm.
1 or 2 year deal, like it's not going to keep him from hitting the open market and getting a payday if he shows up again. So that would make sense. Again, just adding at least one free agent receiver prior to the draft, I think is really important just because you only have 2 guys who are actually starters right now. Like
Yeah.
it's just you can't do that
And
going in. Yeah.
I honestly I think that for the offensive skill positions for running back, wide receiver, and tight end, that might come after the draft.
Could.
Once kind of teams figure out how they spent their assets in the draft, and they're like, all right, we have a hole here. We need to sign some guys, and there's gonna be still some tight ends available. Definitely a lot of running backs available, and a ton
Yeah.
of wide receivers available. So that might wait for a little bit. But in terms of, I think Juju could be really good in this, like the true Matt Canada offense,
I
where
think
a
so
lot
too.
of his motion, he kind of takes that. I know Canada doesn't necessarily come from this school specifically, but that Debo Samuel role, because of his size and his ability to make plays after the catch with his toughness, you know, he can play that quote wide back role where you get him the ball and those jet sweeps. And Claypool's great at that too because of how fast he is to the edge. But
Yeah.
you know, finding ways to use Juju a little more creatively in this offense now that it's going to be more true to what Canada has wanted since he came here, instead of it just being the Ben
Yeah,
it could be more interesting.
as much as we've harped on Canada. It is going to be interesting at least to see what it looks like when he does have the ability to fully install anything he wants to do, because that's what's
Yeah.
going to be the case this year. Now, am I super ecstatic about that? Not really still, but at the very least, I think we'll get to see if he actually has the chops to be an offensive coordinator in the NFL or not. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, like I'm excited for the potential of this offense. And I was listening to the Athletic Football Show,
mhm.
and they were talking about this kind of deal, and they were saying just either be good or be weird. And I'm very down to be weird this year.
Yeah, I mean, with Trubisky, you can get weird. Like
Exactly.
some of the stuff, like watching his good moments with the Bears is really interesting because like he's just a strange quarterback. Like he
Hmm.
really is. Like he's mobile, but like he's not the fastest guy in the world. Obviously, that's not
He's
his
a pretty
biggest
good
thing.
athlete.
But he's a really good athlete. Like he'll do crazy stuff in the
Yeah.
pocket. Like I go back to that Patriots play if you know what I'm talking about from him. If you remember that play, it was wild. He literally ran back like 20 yards at one point, made like 8 guys miss. It
Hmm.
felt like, and
Yeah.
eventually kind of just rode a convoy into the end zone from like 15 yards out. It was crazy. Like that's the type of stuff that he'll do, and I think him off schedule is much more appealing than anybody that was in the building, right? At the very least, if things don't go right initially, I trust him more to actually make something happen opposed to a Rudolph, or despite his great play last year against the Lions.
Yeah.
But other than that, like that's something that we can at least look forward to. Is he's not gonna be a sitting duck in the pocket. And as soon as anyone's around him, we know the play's over, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a big thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the other news that came out was they have announced the compensatory picks, and the
Yes,
kind of the NFL draft order has been finalized. So first 4 rounds are pretty normal. The Steelers don't have a fifth round pick. They have a pick in round 6 that is pick 208.
hmm
It is from the Kansas City Chiefs. I believe this is the Melvin Ingram trade.
I believe so. Yeah.
So that's why they have that. And then they have 2 7th round picks. One is a trade from the Jets. I believe that's the Avery Williamson trade. And then the other one is their normal pick towards the end of round 7. So in terms of, I think the signings they have made is really interesting for how they target the draft. And we
Yes.
talked about how cornerback is definitely a big need right now, assuming they don't make any more signings. I think they've basically eliminated the need to draft offensive linemen in my mind, to be honest.
They have, and like, could I still see them doing it? I guess just
I think a
because,
day 3 tackle,
right,
maybe.
something like that. Yeah, but it does make it so you don't have to draft a lineman anywhere in the first 2 rounds, especially, and probably the third as well.
Hmm.
But it is unfortunate a little bit just because we're both big Zion Johnson guys. But
Yeah.
I don't see him going here now,
No.
especially
Yeah.
um, unless they're willing to
Nobody's more disappointed than me.
Oh, I know, yeah, but no, it does remove that ability because that's what I've been focusing on. Obviously,
Hmm.
was because I expected them to at least target one guy in the
Yeah.
interior, but getting Cole and Daniels makes me feel like they're at least going to try to run it back with mostly what they have right now and see
Hmm.
how it
And
looks.
now they don't need to draft a right tackle.
They don't know, which that's a big thing too because I did not like the prospect of having to
No.
do that anytime in the first 2 days. So
Right. But if they want to draft a guy on day 3 that is a developmental right, guy that can be like, all right, we'll see what we can kind of build out of him. He's going to sit behind Chooks and kind of Dan Moore for the next 2 years. That's fine with me. So like you said, corner in the first few rounds. I think that wide receivers definitely in play. I think that's really the interesting one is now, assuming they don't make a big signing there or bring Juju back.
could be.
At the end of the first round, there's going to be a lot of wide receiver talent. You have both the Ohio State guys, maybe Traylon Burks, maybe Jameson Williams falls because of his injury. Traylon Burks is kind of a Chase Claypool clone in my mind, a little smaller, maybe a little slower, but he's built relatively similarly. He's kind of the same in terms of his skill set. Maybe they go after like a Drake London or a Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson is kind of Deontay esque to me,
Yeah,
but
which I don't know if you want to have two of those guys, but
no, but those are all on the table in my mind, which I think could be fun. And then again, if they don't re-sign Edmonds, there are 2 safeties I really like there in Lewis Cine and Daxton Hill. Very
Daxton
different.
Hill is one of my guys, just so you know.
So
That
Lewis Cine is one of my guys, but I
okay,
do like Daxton a lot as
yeah,
well.
yeah. So he's one of those guys that I could see being a phenomenal, like Hill especially.
Hmm.
His just athleticism is interesting to me because he played mostly slot corner at
Hmm.
Michigan, but I see him as an actual safety in the
Yeah,
NFL. And assuming that you had him and Fitzpatrick back there at the
yeah.
same time, it's probably overkill and not necessary, but it'd be very, very fun to watch teams try to figure that out if you had two
Yeah.
guys like that back there.
Yes,
But
Scene is more of a
scene
clean.
too.
He's more of a clean transition, just playing
Yes.
safety, and he's super smart, super athletic. Mike Tomlin was at the Georgia Pro Day today when we're recording this, and he was apparently out at dinner with Jordan Davis and the Kobe Dean.
Supposedly, I heard about that. Yeah.
So I think Jordan Davis could be in play in the first round if he falls to them. I don't anticipate
I don't think
Tomlin
he
even
will.
said as much. He
I
doesn't
don't think so.
anticipate Davis being there.
I,
Now
yeah.
with the Jack signing, I don't anticipate Dean being the pick there either.
Yeah.
But I like Lewis Seen there a lot if they don't re-sign Edmonds, because he's a really incredible athlete, incredible talent. And then, in the second round, I think wide receiver is still an option, but and now I guess inside linebacker is not as much of an option either. But, maybe if Travis Jones falls, maybe they really like Fedarian Mathis to take over after Alualu leaves because he's getting up there in age. And then third round, I think third round is another round where they could go after a cornerback because that's where kind of the depth gets a little better. The range is better for some of the guys there. And even then, that's where I think they could maybe go after another tight end because, you have Freiermuth and Gentry. After that, it's Kevin Rader. So if
Yeah,
you want to
tight
get
end
another,
is like a sneaky
mm-hmm.
need that this team has because if you can get like a true receiving threat, tight end is like true because as good as Freiermuth is,
I
he's
was going
not
to say
just your.
I was going to say the opposite
Oh,
actually.
you want to bring in more of a
I think
blocking guy?
I think Freiermuth is the receiving threat, and I think you get a Jeremy Ruckert or a Kate Otten,
Oh, okay. I
or
like Ruckert. Yeah, he's
maybe even a Jake Ferguson, who's more of your traditional
Hey, Wisconsin.
Y. Yeah, exactly. Your traditional Y
Those
inline tight
Wisconsin tight
end.
ends, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Get one of those guys to be
No.
the traditional tight end, then you can kind of use Freiermuth as the more versatile type. Because I think he has the skills to do that more so than vice versa. The other guys, I think there are other guys you can get. All right, you're going to play the Y tight end, you're going to block, you're going to align in line, do all that.
There are more of those guys in this class,
exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, and then like in the later rounds, you can kind of just go off the wall. Try to find some maybe backup running back for Najee. Again, you can maybe find a tight end, wide receiver there. And then maybe even in very late rounds, you find a backup nose tackle that could maybe develop into something.
Hey, they like to do that. They like to take their defensive tackles in like the 6th, 7th round.
True.
So
that's very true.
See if they could do that again. I think it does just open up a lot of options for them, right? Because receiver or corner, there could be two guys at that position that fall farther than we expect.
Yeah.
You've mentioned to me a couple of times. I don't think it's going to happen, but people keep talking about Stingley. Is he gonna keep falling?
Yeah.
Like, is people going to keep talking?
Or
about
even Andrew Booth.
Yeah.
Andrew Booth is falling too.
Booth is a guy I would love to have Booth on this team.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he'll be there. Just because
I think he's a lot more likely than Stingley.
He is a lot more
I've seen
likely,
him all over the place, honestly.
Yeah, people don't seem to know where to put him, but like
so he's been hurt a lot, so he didn't work out the combine. He
he's not working out his pro day,
so it's been a rough pre-draft post season for him. So I
could
think
push him down a little bit, yeah. And then I'm a McDuffie guy. I like him a lot, but again, he just hits those thresholds for them too, which is nice. For like the 5'11", he came in exactly at the combine. Like I think that at least he's in play possibly.
Mm-hmm.
And again, receiver is an interesting one because we don't know how early these guys are going to go. Like I assume the earliest we'll see one is the Jets at 10, maybe.
Yeah.
But even then, maybe they don't do that. Maybe if there's a guy that's a really big piece on defense that's still there, especially depending on what they do with pick 4, which I expect to be either the best pass rush or the best corner, one of the two. Maybe Hamilton too is still in play there, probably too, with May going, even with them bringing in Whitehead. But the draft is, I'm not sure where, like, there's going to be a run on certain positions early on, and then it's just going to be how many of them get taken before 20, right? Like,
offensive tackle and edge rusher are going to be the big, and even cornerback to an extent are going to be the big positions in the early going of the draft. So that, with pass rusher taking a premium and even offensive tackle taking a premium, that does help the Steelers because they can push those other guys down.
We don't need to draft those positions. So I think it's still most likely that a receiver that's in whatever top 5 receivers you have, probably at least 2 of them are going to be there.
Yeah.
It feels like, which is great. So if we want to take that route, if you want to take a corner, that's great. I still think my favorite fit receiver is still Sky Moore. I like him a lot.
He's just too much of a Deontay clone for me.
Yeah, I get it, but like he's something, man. Like I just can't get past like the way, like especially because his burst
Mhm.
once he catches the football. Like maybe it does remind me too much of Deontay, and I like Deontay a lot. So maybe that's
Yeah,
what's
that's
getting
the thing
me.
is, like, it's good,
Maybe
it's
that's
just,
what's
like,
getting me, but
I
it's
think they're gonna wanna kinda build out the skill set. That's why I think,
yeah,
maybe either of the Ohio State receivers who are
true.
very different from what they have right now, I think, because Wilson is a pure after the catch guy, and Olave is a pure speed and route running guy, and they don't
Yeah,
really have either of those two things right
they
now. So
don't.
I think
No.
those two are really the best fits, and
George
then
Pickens apparently Tomlin had his eye on him the whole day. Apparently,
that makes a lot of sense too, because if anybody's going to throw hands, it's going to be George Pickens, and he's kind of the deep threat, which I think they don't exactly have either. So that
yeah,
would work
because
too.
Chase hasn't worked out in that role so far. Yeah, so
Exactly.
that'd be interesting. Yeah,
Exactly.
but
All right. Well, that's gonna do it for us on this episode. Like we've been live on my Twitter and the Steelers ATV Twitter. And if you're listening to the podcast, thank you for listening on whatever platform you're listening on. Shane, let people know where they can find you and your work.
find me always at Shane Kubis on Twitter. I've been getting into it with some people on Twitter, which is always fun. About different things going on with the NFL right now, so you can check that out. And if you're watching on at Steelers ATB right now, anyway, you can watch, follow us there. I haven't been posting much there just because I keep forgetting to do so, but I'm gonna try to be better at that. Especially once we get closer to the draft, and I'll probably do some like recap for agency stuff on there too. So check us out there.
And you can find me at Mitchell T. Wolf, WOLFE. I've also been tweeting, not necessarily mixing it up with people as much as Shane has, perhaps,
Oh
but
yeah,
um, getting some stuff out there. Make sure you're following Around the Block on YouTube, on Twitter, on Twitch, on all those platforms. Thank you for tuning in. We hope to have you back next time.